The call came in just after midnight. I hadn't meant to listen. I was in the hallway, barefoot, carrying a charger back to my room when I heard her voice, sharp, hushed, slicing through the quiet like it had something to hide. "It doesn't matter," she said. "She'll say yes. She always does." I froze. She was in the guest room, my sister, Elise. She didn't see me, didn't hear me, didn't know I was standing 5 feet from the door, holding my breath like it would keep the world from shifting under me. "I told you no," she hissed, the edge in her voice barely controlled. "You're the one who pivoted." A pause. Then laughter, low, bitter, cruel. "Please. You think he actually picked her first?" I didn't need the rest. I already understood. Elise and Mason, my fiancé, my sister, before me, maybe during me. The puzzle rearranged itself without effort, the way she always looked away when we kissed, the passive-aggressive compliments, the silence after our engagement went public, her sudden vacation the week before he proposed. I hadn't asked for any of it, but now I couldn't unknow it. I stood there until the call ended, not shaking, not crying, just still. "My name is Claire Hastings. I'm 31. I live in Charleston. I'm a senior coordinator for a logistics firm no one's heard of, and for the past 11 months I've been engaged to a man who picked me as the runner-up. At least now I knew. I didn't cry, I didn't throw anything. That would have made it real too fast. I needed time to catalog the weight of how many times Elise had rewritten my life before I even got to live it. She borrowed my scholarship essay to show a friend, then submitted it under her name to another school. Said I should be flattered when she got in, that it meant my writing worked. She crashed my first job interview and told the hiring manager we were a package deal. I didn't get the call back, she did. She dated my college roommate, said it just happened, that I was being territorial about someone who wasn't mine. The same words Mason would eventually use. Back then, I told myself she was just chaotic, misguided, that someday she'd stop needing to be first, that someday being my sister would be enough for her. Our parents always said she was just spirited. I was the steady one. Steady meant forgettable. But this was different. This wasn't petty. This was architecture. She knew Mason loved attention, knew he folded under pressure. She handed him a choice, and when he picked her first, she told him no. Then handed him me, as if I were the fallback position on a marketing plan. And the worst part wasn't that they did it. It was that they thought I wouldn't notice. Or worse, that I wouldn't care enough to act. She'd always had a way of making her wins feel inevitable and my losses feel like poor timing. Like when she asked to borrow my scholarship letter just to show a friend. Or when she said she'd smooth things over after crashing my job interview and walked out with the offer. I walked back to my room, set the charger down, and lay awake until morning, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Mason texted around 7:30. "Morning, beautiful. Brunch at 11? Got a surprise for you." I stared at the screen, then typed back, "Looking forward to it." We met at the Marina Cafe. He wore his navy blazer, the one Elise always said made him look like a senator. I let him talk about our future, the honeymoon ideas, the seating chart drama. He slid a small box across the table. "Just a little something early," he said. I opened it, a platinum bracelet. Simple, elegant. The tag still on the underside. Not custom, not thoughtful. Not for me. But I smiled. "Thank you," I said. He looked relieved, like he was waiting for something to break and it hadn't. He didn't know it already had. He paid the bill. I watched him walk to the car. His gait was confident, easy, like he had nothing to hide. That's when I realized he thought I would never find out. Or worse, he thought I would forgive him if I did. I remembered Elise's voice. "She'll say yes. She always does. Not this time." At 9:18 that night, I opened my laptop and started a folder titled Ceremony. Not for the wedding, for the plan. The bracelet sat on my nightstand for 3 days, still in its box, still meaningless, like proof of a crime that hadn't been committed, yet. He kept texting, calling, talking about the tasting menu, the officiant, the honeymoon deposits. I let him. Every time he mentioned forever, I nodded. Every time he said us, I agreed. I didn't flinch when he kissed my cheek or held my hand at brunch with his parents. He thought I was all in. So did Elise. She played her part perfectly, showed up with dress options, sent me Pinterest boards for centerpieces, took selfies of us together in front of floral displays like nothing had ever been said behind closed doors. Like she hadn't told someone, whoever it was, that I was the consolation prize. On Friday, she dropped off a stack of RSVP envelopes she'd volunteered to organize. "Can't have the backup bride behind on paperwork," she said with a wink. I didn't respond. She paused, just long enough for tension to bloom. "You okay?" I looked at her, just looked, held her gaze until she blinked. "I'm fine," I said. She laughed. "You always are." She left. I added the audio recorder to the list. The folder titled Ceremony was growing. By Monday, it had screenshots, text backups, metadata from the voicemail server Mason thought he'd deleted from. Nothing scandalous on its own. But together, timeline, tone, frequency, it was enough to show a pattern. I started tracking Elise's movements too. She wasn't subtle. She had a second phone. Used it for gym check-ins, ride-share pickups, a hotel 30 minutes outside the city. Mason's car had been logged at the same hotel 2 Thursdays in a row. A valet ticket in his glove box matched the date Elise's Instagram showed her working late. I didn't confront her. I just added it to the file. Then I went dress shopping. Brought my mother. Let her cry over lace. Let the salesgirl pin me into a gown Elise once said would wash me out. I bought it in full. I booked the venue, met with the florist, confirmed the violinist, every step deliberate, every detail locked. And all the while, Mason beamed like a man who'd gotten away with something. He wasn't nervous. He was smug. That's the thing about men like Mason. They don't expect consequences, just delays and forgiveness or silence. Elise was the same. She thought I'd swallow it, like I always did, like I had when she took my scholarship offer and asked me to understand. This wasn't new. It was just final. I knew exactly how this would play out. They would keep lying until the ceremony, pretending, smiling, toasting. Elise would wear her bridesmaid dress like armor. Mason would say his vows like a script. And then I'd speak, not loud, not cruel, just enough. My mother always said Elise had stage presence. Even as kids, she walked into a room like it owed her something. I was quieter, better at watching than performing. She called it modesty. Elise called it invisibility. At the engagement party, that old balance resurfaced like clockwork. Elise walked in late in a white jumpsuit, tight, polished. Everyone turned. Mason kissed my cheek. Elise kissed his, too close. My aunt whispered, "She could be the bride." Exactly. Elise gave a toast halfway through the night. She hadn't planned one, or so she claimed. But she took the mic like it belonged to her and launched into a monologue about sisterhood and soulmates and how she knew, just knew, that Mason was the man for me. She didn't say when she'd realized it. She didn't say it used to be her. But the smirk in her voice betrayed everything. I smiled through it, posed for photos, clinked champagne glasses, even laughed when Elise made a joke about stealing the show. Mason didn't correct her. Funny, isn't it? Aunt Renee had leaned in, wine-drunk and whispering. They were always close, those two. But look how everything works out. I smiled, because if I opened my mouth, I wouldn't stop. Of course he didn't. He still looked at her like she was the one that got away. I started testing him. Subtle things. I forgot the cake tasting. Canceled it last minute. Mason didn't ask why. Elise texted an hour later. Weird you missed the strawberry almond. It was your favorite, right? I never told her that. She'd told him. The three of us were playing parts in a story they thought I hadn't read. They thought I didn't notice the gaps, the rewrites, the tension. They were wrong. At the rehearsal dinner, Mason made a toast. He said I made him a better man, that I'd restored his faith after a long season of confusion. I nearly laughed. Restored, like I was a patch job on a broken plan. He lifted his glass. To Claire, my first and only choice. Across the table, Elise froze, just for a second. But I saw it. So did he. I excused myself early and walked to the parking lot, the night air sharp enough to bite. I sat in my car and opened the folder again. There was a new file, a photo from a week before the proposal. Elise's phone, her bedroom, Mason's jacket on the floor. I stared at it for a long time. Not for proof, for timing. He had come from her house straight to the store where he bought my ring. I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel rage. I felt clarity. Everything was rehearsed. Everything was built on borrowed lines and stolen glances and timing they thought I couldn't trace. But I had the receipts. They wrote the script. I was just changing the ending. The photos came from her cloud backup. She must have synced the wrong album, or maybe she was just careless. I wasn't snooping. I was helping her pick music for the reception when she handed me her iPad and left the room. One swipe too far and it opened. A burst of thumbnails from the previous month. Bedroom shots, hotel mirrors. One of Mason, half-dressed, holding her phone. The last one sealed it. Him asleep, her beside him, her hand on his chest. Captioned, "If only she knew." She'd saved it under a hidden album labeled Extras. I copied everything. Quietly. Airdropped it to my phone and backed it up to a folder now titled Vows. She came back into the room talking about flower arrangements. I smiled, agreed that the lilies were too much, told her the peonies would be perfect. It was surreal how easy it became. The more evidence I gathered, the calmer I got. Because now there was no ambiguity, no doubt, no room for interpretation, just facts. They hadn't slipped. They'd chosen this. Chosen to betray me not once, but repeatedly, with confidence, with a smile, with ceremony. And so I planned one of my own. I booked a photographer, not the official one. A friend, someone discreet. I asked her to shoot the wedding like a documentary. Candid, I said, real moments. She asked if I wanted final approval before anything was shared. Whatever tells the truth, I said. No edits. She paused. You sure? I nodded. They wanted a moment. Give them one. I meant exposure. I meant evidence. I meant legacy. I rewrote my vows that week, twice, 3 times. The final version was cold, precise. Not a performance, just the truth laid bare like a scalpel on silk. Meanwhile, Elise was glowing. At the final dress fitting, she spun in front of the mirror in her champagne bridesmaid gown. Don't I look like a bride myself? She said. I looked at her reflection. You always have. She didn't hear the blade beneath it. The night before the ceremony, Mason stayed at his best man's house. He knelt by the water, velvet box open. Said I made him whole, that no one had ever understood him like I did. I remember thinking, this speech feels printed from the internet. He texted me, can't believe it's really happening? You ready for forever? I stared at the message, then I typed back, forever starts tomorrow. I turned off my phone and sat by the window, watching the porch lights flicker off down the street. They thought I was walking into a marriage. They didn't realize I was walking into the last scene of their shared lie. And I wasn't walking in alone. I had the files, I had the footage, I had the mic. The chapel was small, intimate by design. 50 guests, mostly family, enough to witness, not enough to interfere. Elise was already at the front when I arrived, smoothing her dress like she was preparing for her own spotlight. Mason waited beside the officiant, all practiced charm and borrowed sincerity. His eyes lit up when he saw me in the doorway. Not like a man seeing his future, more like a man relieved his lie still held. I walked down the aisle slowly, calm, focused. My dress moved like water. Every step was measured. People smiled, phones came out. Elise dabbed at the corner of her eye. Mason reached for my hand. I gave it to him. The officiant spoke. We nodded at the right places, laughed softly, shared glances like a real couple. It was all going according to script. Then it was time for vows. He went first, talked about destiny, about how love can be unexpected, about how sometimes life surprises you. Elise smiled. When it was my turn, I took the mic, paused, then looked at Mason, then Elise, then back to Mason. I rewrote my vows last night, I said. Thought I'd make them more accurate. A ripple of confusion moved through the room. I opened the folder, held up the tablet, swiped once. The chapel screen lit up. Mason and Elise in her bedroom, time-stamped, smiling. Her caption, "If only she knew." Gasps. Someone dropped a glass in the back. My mother stood. My father sat. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just kept reading. Vows are a promise, but so is betrayal. So is omission. So is pretending this ring, I held up my hand, wasn't meant for someone else first. Mason stepped forward. Claire, I held up my palm. Number, you don't speak now. You've had enough lines. I turned to Elise. She said no, didn't she? Elise's mouth parted, then closed. The night before you proposed, you were in her bed. That's not an accusation, that's a timeline. I turned back to the guests. If anyone feels uncomfortable, I understand. Imagine how it felt being second choice and not knowing it. Imagine planning a wedding with the woman who thought you'd never find out. Silence. I'm not angry, I said. I'm just done. I placed the mic down, removed the ring, set it beside the bouquet, and walked out of the chapel without looking back. I didn't run. I walked, down the aisle, through the doors, into the parking lot, where the air was cooler than expected for late spring. My heels clicked like punctuation behind me. Clean. Final. No one followed. Not yet. I unlocked my car and sat in the driver's seat without turning on the engine. Just breathing. Still. Controlled. Inside, they were unraveling. That much I knew without seeing it. Mason would try to spin it first. Say it was exaggerated, misunderstood, old. Elise would go pale, then red, then start crying. She always did when the room turned against her. My father would try to calm everyone down. My mother would be frozen, maybe furious, maybe humiliated. But none of it mattered anymore. They'd had their moment. Now it was mine. My phone buzzed. Mason, then Elise, then Mason again. I let it ring. Then I opened my message drafts. 2 taps sent the folder labeled Vows to 5 inboxes. Mason's employer, Elise's manager, my parents, and the wedding photographer. The photos, the timestamps, the receipts. A simple caption, "For your records." I didn't add commentary, didn't need to. Let them fill in the blanks, let them deal with the aftermath. My role was finished. Except it wasn't. Not quite. Elise came out 20 minutes later, mascara streaked, heels in hand. She looked around like she didn't expect me to still be there. I rolled the window down halfway. She approached like she had something rehearsed, but I didn't let her start. She stood there like she did at the 9th grade debate finals, after taking credit for my research. Same shoulders, same tilt of her chin. That time, I let her walk away with the ribbon. This time, I wouldn't. "You didn't have to lie," I said. She blinked. "Claire? You could have said no. Could have told me you'd been with him, could have told him to tell the truth." Her jaw tensed. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way." "No," I said. "It was supposed to happen quietly, and I was supposed to say yes, like I always do." Silence. She glanced at her reflection in my window, wiped her eyes. "You just blew up your own wedding." "No," I corrected. "I detonated yours." She flinched. "Every room he walks into now, people will know. Every job you apply to, they'll see it. I made sure of it." "That's cruel." I shrugged. "No more than you were." She stepped back. "I guess we're even now." "We're not," I said. "You lost the audience. I never needed one." I rolled the window up. She stood there for a second longer, then turned and walked away, barefoot on the asphalt. By the time I pulled out of the lot, she was just a blur in the rearview mirror. There was no honeymoon to cancel, no joint accounts to close, no name to change back. Just silence, cold, clean. I went back to work on Monday like nothing had happened. No one asked, but they all knew. Elise's manager had forwarded the photos to HR. Mason's firm revoked his offer for a promotion. My mother left a voicemail I never played. Elise texted once. "You really think this fixes anything?" I didn't reply. There was nothing left to fix. I moved out of the condo Mason and I had leased together, left most of it behind, the plates we picked out, the couch she once complimented, the framed print of Paris that wasn't mine, wasn't his, just filler for a life that never fit. I rented a 1-bedroom on the other side of town. Concrete floors, no crown molding, no history. I slept better in that space than I had in years. The story made its rounds. A few guests whispered. A distant cousin wrote a blog post that got picked up by a wedding gossip forum. People speculated about what I did next. What I did was nothing. No interviews, no revenge TED Talk, no viral thread, just quiet. That was always the thing Elise never understood. She thought power came from performance, from spotlight, from followers. But I learned early that silence was its own kind of weapon. It unnerves people. It forces them to sit with themselves. Mason tried to meet once, left a note in my mailbox, just to explain, just to talk. I shredded it. He'd already said enough. By the end of summer, Elise was off social media. Mason's name stopped appearing on local 40 under 40 lists. I still saw them sometimes, at a distance, grocery store lines, local events. Elise avoided eye contact. Mason looked like a man still trying to solve a puzzle he didn't know was broken when he picked it up. They stayed together, I heard. Made sense. It's hard to leave someone who holds your secrets, but they never rebuilt their reputations. No rebrand stuck, no apology landed, because it wasn't about what they did, it was about the way they underestimated silence. 1 year later, I stood in a bookstore, watching a woman try on wedding bands with her sister, laughing, holding up her hand like it was a promise. I didn't feel bitterness or envy, just clarity. I walked past them, picked up a new hardcover and headed for checkout. No ring on my finger, no weight in my chest, just one thought. They'll never know what it's like to be chosen second and leave first. I still keep the bracelet, the one he gave me before the proposal. I don't wear it. It sits at the back of a drawer, cold, perfect, meaningless. Sometimes I think about throwing it away, melting it down, selling it, but I don't. It reminds me of something important. Not all betrayals come with jagged edges. Some are smooth, polished, meant to charm you into silence. The bracelet stays. Not because it means something now, but because once it didn't. And I pretended it did. I don't do that anymore.